we began the season of Lent, being reminded that it is a time of preparation, time of evaluating, checking our own attitudes, our own lives, that we are ready to receive the grace and the mercy of God's gift in sending His Son to take upon our sin and our iniquity, to go to the cross, pay the price for our redemption, and bring us back into the family of God. But in order for all of that to be ours and to be full in our lives, there is the necessity of preparation. As a people, preparation is not really that thing that we really pay a lot of attention to. All you have to do is look at our highways. We pave a nice road, and as soon as it's paved, then here comes Manila water and tears it up. And once Manila water has tore it up, sometimes they don't fix it right away. No preparation. Where's the coordination between the government offices? None. So we are used to a lack of coordination or a lack of preparation. It's life for us. When it's time to do something, then, now we got to do this. It should have been done prior. If we look at the story of Noah, Noah came at a very, very interesting period of time, but yet that period of time speaks to us today, because the things of old are also that which is a part of our life today. The world at the time of Noah was very wicked. There was no one that was righteous except God saw Noah. And so God talked to Noah and said to Noah, Noah, I'm going to cause there to be a flood. It's going to rain, and I want you to build an ark so that you can be saved. Noah didn't know what he was talking about. He had never seen an ark. He didn't know what an ark was. He'd never seen a boat. He didn't even understand rain, because it wasn't raining at that time. It didn't rain. And so here now God was telling him these things are going to happen, yet he did not understand by knowledge what was going to take place. So God gave him the dimensions of the ark and told him how to put it together. So Noah began building an ark. And as he was building the ark, he was telling the people what he was doing, because they were wondering, what is this man doing? What's he building? What is this huge thing that he's coming up with? Why this? And he said, it's because it's going to rain. Rain? Are you crazy? It has never rained since we've known anything. It has never rained. And a flood? Ha! You are crazy. But Noah kept his faith in what God said to him. For 100 years it took him to build the ark. 100 years. How impatient we are. We are so impatient. We want everything now. We're not happy by having to wait for things. We've become a very arrogant, self-centered, rebellious people. We cannot see something in the future that we have to prepare for, because we want it now. We don't want to wait for lunch, so we stop at Jollibee or McDonald's or somewhere else because I can get it now. So we find ourselves lacking in preparation, getting ready for what God is preparing for us. When rain started, when it began to rain, just prior to that, God told Noah, bring your family into the ark and bring 2 of every animal into the ark, because I'm going to save them. And so they went into the ark, and all the people were mocking them and making fun of them. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? When it was time, God closed the door. It was over. When it started to rain, the people came and wanted to come in. They would knock on the door. Please open. Noah couldn't open because he was preparing. He had prepared. And because he prepared, he was already there inside. When the flood was over, 40 days, 40 nights it rained. When it was finished, God said, I want to give you a peace of mind. I will never do this again. And so he put a rainbow in the sky. Beautiful sign. He says in his reading, it's so that I will be reminded. I don't think God needs to be reminded. It's us that needs to be reminded. Whenever we see that rainbow, many times we grab our cameras or our phones, we want to get a picture. What does it say? We don't know what it says. We just want the picture. It says, I will not destroy you again. I will not. I want you to have that peace. Don't be worried. Will this happen again? Will we have an earthquake? Will we have this? Will we have that? God says, I'm not going to do it again. When these things come, we don't blame God for them. We must remember, God promised, I will not destroy you. Peter, in the epistle, he shares his experiences about Christ. He was with Christ. He was with Christ at his trial. He was there for the crucifixion. He was there afterwards. He was the one who recognized that Jesus was the Son of God. And so he shared with the people what he had experienced. See, if you don't have anything to be proud about or anything to be committed to, you don't have anything to talk about. Some people just talk, and their talk is worthless, and it's empty, it doesn't say a lot, because they don't have anything that means anything. It's like, oh, you know what the color of the wall is? You know how high the ceiling is? There are lights. Big deal. What's here? What's real value to us? What is that which means something to us? The cross. The death of Christ. Peter saw this as something very valuable to him. And he spent his time sharing what God had done. And he mentions Noah. He brings in Noah because the old and the new go together. They're not separated. Noah was setting a pattern, being led by God, a pattern that was going to affect man throughout all creation. The boat, salvation through the water, all this was going to be a part of what God was doing, setting direction. The 40 days, we see the 40 days of the children of Israel in the wilderness. 40 days when Elijah walked before he actually saw or heard from God. The time when he was alone. The temptation of Christ in the wilderness, 40 days. There's something special about 40. Whether it's days or years. The children of Israel were in the wilderness for 40 years. But there's a pattern that God brings into existence, and he follows through. The testing, the trials, all these things have a time for us to face and to overcome. Noah was a pattern for salvation. He and his family were saved because they were in the boat. They were in water, but they were in the boat, and the boat brought them to safety, brought them to new life. And when they came forth, God said to them, "Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth." Repeated to them what God spoke to Adam in the very beginning, to man in creation. We see here how that God, speaking through Peter, says to the people, "I will not destroy you again." We see that when Peter was talking, he said Christ went to Hades, hell, Sheol, and spoke to those who were there. Even though they had no provision prior to Christ, Christ did not leave them there. He went and he brought them forth. In Psalm 16, verse 10, the psalmist wrote this, "For thou wilt not abandon my soul to Sheol." He knew that God would not abandon him. He understood the rainbow. Do we understand the signs God has given to us? Do we comprehend them? I saw a couple of articles several weeks ago about an examination that had taken place among several, I don't know how many, but the picture was a large crowd of Filipinos. It said even though they can use good words and words of value, they don't understand what they're talking about. They have no comprehension of evaluation of things around them, no preparation. We need to follow the patterns that God has given to us. Prepare. Prepare. If you look at the life of Christ, the life of God, in Genesis, he worked for 6 days. His works were so perfect that on the 7th day he did not work. He didn't wait till the last minute to do something. He had planned it all prior before he started creation. The details were all worked out in perfection. What he did in creation was so perfect, he has not had to repeat it, and it still is in existence today. But he rested on the 7th day. The question to us, do we ever come to a point of having preparation so perfect that we rest? Do we rest? Do we really find ourselves in that place where I can sit down and listen? When I can receive and I'm not busy doing something else? It's amazing because we come to worship God, but when we come, it's as though we're not prepared. We come, we have to talk, we have to do this, we have to do that. We're not ready to receive. And so do we receive? Possibly not, because we have not prepared ourselves to receive. I sat here this morning, and all around I could hear voices talking to each other, not to God. Not preparing themselves to receive something from God. Is it any wonder we don't have a life filled with joy? Did not God say, "My joy I give to you"? He wants us to be filled with joy, but we're so busy with our own events, our own things. We have no time to be joyful in Him. We don't find ourselves prepared. We're kind of right up to the last minute. Let's do this, let's do that, let's do this, let's do that. We can't pause and say, I'm ready to receive. A challenge to us in Lent, because if we are not prepared, we're not going to receive. Christ has done the work. I read in a scripture this week where we have been perfected in Him. Perfected in Him. But do we find ourselves perfect? No. We don't believe that. We are still struggling and battling. We're still having problems with existence. Rather than accepting what God has given to us as what He intended us to have. When it comes time to our professions, do we ask God, what you have given me the gift that I can fulfill in life? Or do we choose our own and then go out and try to train ourselves to be something different maybe than what God intended us to be? Preparation, that listening to God, giving God that place of time in our lives. Jesus comes to the River Jordan where John was baptizing. Jesus had come from God. We understand this because he was born in Bethlehem of the Virgin Mary. The angels came at that time. Everything brought forth the understanding, this is the Messiah. But when Jesus comes to the River Jordan, John had been preaching and talking to the people and telling them the Messiah is coming. When Jesus came, he identified him as the Messiah. Jesus said, baptize me. He said, oh, I'm not worthy to baptize you. Jesus said, the purpose for this is now. It's necessary for us to fulfill all righteousness. It didn't matter who he was, but he understood he was making a pathway, a journey for us to follow. And so he, in order to be where God wanted him to be as that witness, he submitted himself to baptism. When he came up out of the water, it tells us that the heavens opened and a dove, representing the Holy Spirit, descended. And a voice spoke and said, this is my beloved Son. The identity now was made public. God was making it clear. This is the one. And it tells us here in this reading, when the time was full, when the time was complete. We're living in a completed time. We're not waiting for something. We have been given everything. And it's up to us now to take what God has given to us and use it. But we have to be prepared. That preparation comes through the baptism. That baptism is given in the church. The church is a representation of the ark. If you are in the church, then you can get through the storms. If you're outside, not talking about a structure as far as a denomination or something like that is concerned. It's talking about that which is from God. It's God's church. It's His. Are you there? When Christ was baptized, it says the Spirit took him to the wilderness. The wilderness. Evil. Darkness. He was going to be tempted. Why would he need to be tempted? He was going to show to us and give to us the example of power, the power that comes from God in our lives. He wasn't just baptized and that's it. But he took that baptism, proved what God had given to him before he began his ministry. He was tempted in the wilderness. The temptation was, would he use the power that God had given to him for the service of the kingdom, or would he use it for his own benefit? The first temptation he faced was self. 40 days he had not eaten. 40 days, the body comes to that point where it's possible that you could not return, that you would die. Was he hungry? He did not deny that he was hungry. The temptation was, take care of yourself. The enemy said, turn this rock into bread and eat. Wouldn't do it. He said, for God says, man shall not live by bread alone. But I bring this out to us. That statement came from Deuteronomy. It was what God had spoken to Israel while they were in the wilderness. Man shall not live by bread alone. And yet most of us still today, the eating is one of the most valuable aspects of our life. I can remember when we first came to the Philippines, we were shocked how many times a day people would eat. And then have a refrigerator in their bedroom so that they could eat in the middle of the night. Food, so valuable to us. We have, this is our main event of life almost. In the wilderness with Israel when they were brought out of Egypt, God allowed them to be hungry for one purpose. He was going to feed them. He was showing them and showing us, your life comes from God. It's not you. It's God. His provision He gives to you. This was the first temptation that Jesus had to face. Was He going to think of self? Or was He going to let God be God? So He said to Satan, man shall not live by bread alone. His second temptation was what I would term political power. Because Satan said, if you will worship me, I will give you all the earth. The first time I read that, I thought, who is he? He doesn't have the earth, but he did. At that point, he was the master over the earth. But Jesus, he again quoted from Deuteronomy. You shall not worship anything other than the Lord. You shall worship the Lord only, your God, and Him only shall you serve. Him only shall you serve. How many of us find ourselves worshiping other things or serving other purposes with the talents God has given to us? The talents He's given to us are meant to worship Him with. We have a musical talent, it's to worship God, not to gain an audience in the world to make money. But it's to give glory to Him, give honor to Him. Whatever we do is in service to Him. As some things, many things, it can be that it's done for others, but it's for Him. It's being service for Him. Last week we did medical dental for the neighborhood. Not for people to look to us, but so that we could be using our talents to help mankind rise up and be what God intended them to be. Political power. God will give you what He wants you to have. Our task is to worship God. We see today in Christianity, many people wanting big congregations. And if you talk to somebody, they'll say, oh, we have 20 churches, we have 50 churches, we have 100 churches, we have 15,000 people, we have 6 million people. We saw this in the paper, in the news just this week. Somebody was stopped in Hawaii because of carrying more money than you're supposed to carry. I have 6 million members. I have 6 million, excuse me. Christ is the church. I will build my church. I will build my church. Not you. It's him. I'm just using that as an example. Because this is what happens. We boast about how many people do I serve. No. It's for God. We work. Political power is not a part of what we have. The third temptation was seeking something spectacular. He was taken to the temple top up on the peak, and the devil said, jump. The angels will take care of you, because the Bible says the angels are assigned to watch over you. Spectacular. Something that draws attention to people. How many television programs show people being slain in the power, being healed or whatever, for an audience? Some, look at me, what I can do. It's not me. It's it. It's wrong for me to use what he does for my glory. Not for show. What we do for God. Yes, the devil quoted correctly from Scriptures, because it says in Psalm 91, angels have the charge over you. But the response of Jesus again was from Deuteronomy. You shall not put the Lord your God to the test. Don't test him. Excuse me. Deuteronomy was written at a time when the people were in the wilderness. It was before they had been taken across the Jordan into the promised land. And Moses reminded them of the favors of God as they were getting ready to go in. And here we find Christ going back to that time to speak to us about the necessities of straightening our life according to the patterns of God. 40 days shows us that it doesn't happen instantly. It requires preparation. And as we come into the season of Lent, the necessity of preparing ourselves. The cross is veiled for a purpose, because we have to come to it. We have to come through the veil in order to receive the fullness of what God has given to us. It's setting aside in our life other things, because we are told to serve the Lord with all our heart, our soul, and our mind. Everything is for him. But how much of our life do we give to others? How much of our life do we give that others can use us rather than God using us? Lent is a time to value our hearts. What is my commitment to God? How much do I love him? When I come through that door, do I prepare myself to receive from him today? Or do I want to talk to everybody else and talk about, I did this, I did that. What about you? How are you doing? Are we listening to him or to each other? Not that it's wrong to be concerned for others, but when we set aside the time to worship God, it belongs to him. It's his. How valuable is our time with God? When we say we start at 9 o'clock, Exactly at 9 we start. Why? Because we have an appointment with God, and it's important. It's important. When you're with somebody important, you get there on time. If you respect him, you'll be there. You won't delay. Oh, he's nothing. Whenever I get ready, he'll be waiting for me. Will he? We should be waiting for him. Is the time we worship him so valuable and so important in our lives that we let nothing interfere with it. Nothing. Because we respect what he's done. Christ gave his life for us. He gave his life for us. He was humiliated. He was put down. He was put to shame. But he did it for us. Do we not have a responsibility to give back to him in a like manner? He was tempted in the Garden of Gethsemane. He let us know his feelings, his human nature. Is there not another way that this could be done? Can this cup not pass away? Then he said, no, not my will. Your will be done. He put aside self. He denied himself. Nothing was going to get in his way from what he knew he had to do. Let them do to me whatever they want. I know where I'm going, and I know the goal that I'm going to reach. Do we know? Do we have this understanding? Do we have this awareness in our lives of what we have to do for God? It's a real challenge for us. A real challenge for us. Because we live in a world that tells us, do what you want. Whatever pleases you, that's the most important thing. It's not because I'm so important. I'm important to be a ministry to others. To give up my life for others. This is what the first Sunday of Lent challenges us. Preparation. Preparation. Are we prepared? Or do we let other things get in our way? Do we give of ourselves to make certain that Christ is number one? He set time for us to meet him on Sundays. Do we meet him on Sunday? Do we prepare ourselves for that meeting? Several times I've been to Moloch and Young for meetings. And they would give you, before you could come there, they would give you a list of requirements. What you had to wear, about your arrival time, all of these details. And you were required to be there, I think it was 15 to 30 minutes before your appointment. You could not wait until it's time to get there and then arrive. No, you had to be there beforehand. You had to have on certain attire because it was showing respect, showing proper attitude. Do we see this in the world today? Things don't matter. Just whatever. Balana. Do we really have a respect for God? To give him our all? To be ready to meet him? Not coming in and saying, "Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm just tired today," or I'll get ready. Forgive me. Or are we really there, waiting and excited about knowing him and receiving him? He gave his all for us. Do we give our all for him? It's a challenge for us. But this is what Lent is all about. Self-evaluation. It's really not a time of sorrow. Really not a time of heaviness. It's a time of evaluation. And to evaluate, you have to be quiet. Because most of the time, our talking covers up our weakness. We talk. We see it happens so often that when something takes place, we immediately think, their fault. When Adam and Eve got into trouble in the garden, God asked Adam, why did you do this? My wife. My wife did it. She caused me to do this. It's her fault. So he asked Eve, why'd you do this? It was Satan. We've kept this as a part of our human nature, and it's wrong. We need to evaluate who we are and what our commitments are. When we fail, acknowledge them. Don't become upset and angry because somebody accuses you of something. Did I do it or didn't I do it? If I didn't, that's their problem. If I did it, correct it. But you see, we have come to a point where we're the most important thing. Don't accuse me of something. I'm perfect. I know a lot of perfect idiots. But what God has given to us is so valuable, we should be bringing it forth to the best of our ability. Where we are weak, remember, He will be our strength. We need not be anxious, need not be worried. We began Lent by evaluation. We went through the litany. What a lengthy prayer. How it touched every aspect of our life. Let me tell you this. In your customary today, that prayer is there. Take it home with you. Take it home with you. And don't just put it in your Bible and forget it. Every once in a while, get it out and pray. You can do it. You can pretend you're two different people. Do the one part and then read the other part. You can do it because it helps us. It helps us to acknowledge we need help. Lord, have mercy. He will not fail us. This is a season of evaluation. May we learn and may we prepare ourselves.